Will week 7 of the college football season have even more upsets? Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ross Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. Me and Will and D just didn't have time to do our weekly live stream predicting every single college football game of the week, but I'm going to be doing a pretty quick video going through every single big game of the college football slate this week and give my predictions for every single one. Now, on Friday night, we've got a Big Ten battle between Northwestern and Maryland, two teams that Indiana has beaten. And Maryland, they look like a better offensive team than Northwestern, even though the Wildcats did do a little bit better on offense against Indiana. Maryland also had a bye this past week, which will help them out as well, be able to prepare for Northwestern. They've had 2 weeks to do it. They're favored by 10.5, and it's on their own field. I'm going to go with Maryland to knock off Northwestern 31-20. Then we also have a former Pac-12 battle, now Big 12 matchup between the Utah Utes and the Arizona State Sun Devils. This is an interesting game because Arizona State has been playing a lot better this season. They're 4-1 right now, 2 wins away from bowl eligibility, and I believe that Tempe's going to be rocking and rolling on Friday night. But the Utah Utes got great news in the announcement that Cam Rising is going to be back. Honestly, if he was not playing in this game, I would actually go with Arizona State to win. But since Cam Rising has announced by his own mouth that he is going to be playing, it's not a joke. This is actually legit. He will be playing in this game. I'm going to go with the Utah Utes to knock off Arizona State 34-24. I believe Arizona State will keep it close, but Cam Rising will help out the Utes pull it out in the end. Then to move on to the Saturday games, we got the South Carolina Gamecocks traveling to the Alabama Crimson Tide, and Alabama's coming off an embarrassing loss to the Vanderbilt Commodores right after knocking off the Georgia Bulldogs. Just an insane swing from Alabama. Definitely something that would not have happened under Nick Saban most likely, but Kalen DeBoer, I do believe that he is going to have that team focused and ready to play after that embarrassing loss. South Carolina's not a bad team. They have had their moments this season of playing good football, and Alabama's secondary is a big question mark, but you got Ryan Williams, you got Jalen Milroe. Milroe always plays better coming off of a loss. I think South Carolina will put up 20 points, though, because Alabama's secondary being a bit weak, but Alabama's going to end up scoring 41 points in this game to get a comfortable win over the South Carolina Gamecocks. Then we got Clemson traveling to Wake Forest. Wake Forest is not good. I know Clemson sometimes has games where they overlook opponents and they struggle, and it is on the road, but Wake Forest is really, truly playing awful football. I think Clemson easily wins this game 45-17. Then we also have a Big Ten battle between Washington and Iowa. Iowa is at home, and they are coming off a tough loss to Ohio State, whereas Washington just got a big emotional win over the Michigan Wolverines on their own field. Washington, they have struggled on the road a little bit. They lost to Rutgers. It is going to be a tough travel for Washington and coming off that emotional swing win. And Iowa needs this game to stay on track for bowl eligibility and to have a good season. I think Iowa squeaks out a 24-21 win over Washington. Then you got Wisconsin and Rutgers. Wisconsin's looking kind of anemic right now. They're not playing very well. Whereas Rutgers, even though they did lose their last game to Nebraska, they have been playing pretty solid football, and they were competitive with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They have a good defense. Their offense is very solid, and Wisconsin's just really struggling. Give me Rutgers to win 27-21 over Wisconsin. Then we got Georgia Tech, North Carolina. North Carolina is playing terrible football, and Georgia Tech normally beats North Carolina. The Yellow Jackets seem to have the Tar Heels number, even though it's in Kenan Stadium. North Carolina really hasn't been able to win any big game since the Minnesota game in week 1. I believe that Georgia Tech will knock off North Carolina 31-24. Then we have the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners and the Red River rivalry. This is a big one right here. Texas is number 1 in the country now that Alabama lost, but Oklahoma has had Texas's number, especially in the 3:30 window the past few years. That's really interesting there. And Texas, they have had their moments of not looking like the number 1 team either. Against Mississippi State, they kind of struggle with them. But Oklahoma, they just are not good enough of an offensive team for me to believe they can knock off Texas. If they had Dylan Gabriel still, or they had Lincoln Riley at coach, I will be more confident in it. I know that Brent Venables is trying to instill a defensive-oriented team here, and Oklahoma is better on defense than they used to be, but that offense is lacking. I do believe that Texas will end up knocking off Oklahoma in this big rivalry game, 34-27. Then you got Penn State traveling to USC. I don't trust Penn State in big games. I don't trust Penn State on the road, but USC is really struggling right now. They just lost to the Minnesota Golden Gophers. But the thing is, man, is that every time you believe in Penn State and you think that this is their year to be a legit Big Ten title team, they end up choking it away in a game. I actually, for whatever reason, think USC is going to end up turning it around after that embarrassing loss to Minnesota. They're going to be angry, and they're going to come out with a 31-24 win over Penn State. Call me crazy, but I think USC pulls out the win. Then we got Stanford and Notre Dame. On paper, you're like, Notre Dame should blow out Stanford, right? I mean, Stanford's 2-3. They're not a great football team outside of one wide receiver. And Notre Dame, they are a top 15 team. Even though they should have not lost to Northern Illinois, they'd be ranked in the top 10 right now. But they do have other quality wins so far. But Notre Dame lost to Stanford the last time these two teams played on Notre Dame's field, and Notre Dame was a heavy favorite in that game. So I think Notre Dame might struggle at first, but I do believe since they already have that embarrassing loss to Northern Illinois under their belt, Notre Dame will pull out a 34-20 win over Stanford. Then you got Cal going to Pitt. California is 3-2. They've lost a couple of games. They actually had a shot to win. And Pittsburgh, they're 5-0. And they're playing some of the best football in the Pat Narduzzi era in a few seasons, since at least the Kenny Pickett era. But California, imagine if they were 5-0. Imagine if they did knock off Florida State and then they knocked off Miami. They really should have won both those games. This would be a completely different matchup right here. Both teams would be ranked. I don't know, man. I think Pitt's all right. I don't think they're a great team, though. I do think that they are one of the weakest undefeated teams still in college football. But Cal, they have struggled to close out games. So I'm going to reluctantly go with Pittsburgh to win 27-24. I'm not confident in that pick, but I do think with them being at home, they'll get the win. Illinois should easily beat Purdue 38-10. Purdue is playing truly awful football. Virginia, Louisville's an underrated game. Louisville 3-2 now, not ranked anymore. Virginia 4-1. It is on the road. I think Louisville is going to be a little bit angry that they have kind of struggled out of the gate this season. They've had some tough games. I think Louisville will squeak out a 31-27 win, but Virginia's going to give them a game. Cincinnati, UCS, one of those bottom of the barrel Big 12 games. You really just don't know who to pick. I think UCF will win 31-28, but UCF is not looking good right now. And when they're a favorite, they normally don't win, but they're not a heavy favorite, and Cincinnati's been struggling too. I think that UCF will win. Then we also have Arizona going to BYU. BYU is a great home environment. Arizona's playing better football recently, so I think Arizona will end up giving BYU a game. But BYU, I mean, they are undefeated, and you could say that kind of like Pittsburgh, maybe they aren't one of the best undefeated teams still, but I like BYU on their own field. They always play well usually on their home turf, even if they don't win. But I will say it's not at night, though. Usually when BYU has night games, that's when their environment really comes to life. This game's in the afternoon, so it might not be as good of an environment, but Arizona still just does not look like a great defensive team. I think BYU will squeak out a 28-27 win over Arizona. Georgia should roll over Mississippi State. Florida and Tennessee. Florida has owned the rivalry over Tennessee for a very long time, but this is not the same Tennessee team as they used to be. They're a whole lot better now, but they're coming off a loss to Arkansas, a team that they should have beaten, but they fell short. Florida is 3-2. Billy Napier trying to save his job at Florida. His hot seat has cooled just a little bit, still hot as ever, but if he can win this game, that would definitely help save his job for sure, but it is on the road. If it was at Florida, I would maybe consider it, but Tennessee coming off a loss, they're on their own field, and they still have the pain and frustration of struggling against Florida for so long that I think Tennessee bounces back with a 38-24 win over the Gators. Then we got Ohio State and Oregon on NBC. This is the game of the night right here and the game of the week. Ohio State's been playing great football. I cannot complain with their play. They've been doing good on both sides of the ball. Some people are still comparing Kyle McCord to Will Howard. It really hasn't mattered so far. They got a plethora of great players on offense. Their defense, you could say at times maybe they're a little bit vulnerable in the run defense, but still, I think Ohio State's defense is solid enough. Oregon, though, it's at home. It's going to be at night, especially in the second half. They haven't looked that good at first, but they really have been starting to play better down the stretch. I've been going back and forth on this game, and I know that Buckeyes fans are going to go nuts if I do not pick them to win, and especially if they do win and I don't pick them. They're going to let me know about it. But it's at Autzen, man. I think that Oregon's going to find a way to knock off Ohio State. 31-28. It's going to be a fantastic game. I cannot wait for this matchup. Dylan Gabriel, though, an experienced quarterback, and Oregon knocked off Ohio State a couple years ago in Columbus. I think Oregon finds a way to get them again on their own field in this massive Big Ten showdown between top 5 teams. Then we got another great matchup that's going to get a lot of viewers as well. Ole Miss traveling to LSU. Both these teams have suffered a loss. LSU dropped to USC in week 1. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky a couple weeks ago, which is insane that they lost that game. Ole Miss is favored by 3.5. Problem, though, is it's in Death Valley. I think Ole Miss is the better team. Ole Miss should win this game based off their talent alone. Trey Harris, Jackson Dart, they got a great defense. But it's at LSU, man. It's at Tiger Stadium, Death Valley, going to be at night. And Death Valley at night is a completely different beast. I think I'm going to pick LSU to knock off Ole Miss 34-27. Even though Ole Miss is the better team, in my opinion, I think LSU gets the dub. Then we got Vanderbilt, Kentucky. Interesting game here. Vanderbilt coming off that monumental win over Alabama. Can they continue it with a win over Kentucky? I don't think so. I think that was lightning in a bottle. Plus, Bama played really bad in that game coming off the Georgia game. Definitely a hangover for the Crimson Tide. I think Kentucky knocks off Vandy 34-24. Should be an interesting game at first, but Kentucky will win. Then another good game on Fox. Not as big as the other two games between Ohio State, Oregon, and also Ole Miss, LSU. But you got Iowa State at West Virginia. West Virginia is a tough place to play at night as well. And Iowa State, they are undefeated, but have they looked fantastic? I wouldn't say that they have. They've had their moments where they haven't looked great, but they are a good team. Matt Campbell's definitely turned them around, but Iowa State does not have enough talent to be able to go on the road and play an average game and get a win over a team like West Virginia. If they were a team like Georgia or Alabama, they definitely could, but Iowa State, I think they're going to trip up here. I'm going to go with West Virginia and Country Roads to knock off Iowa State 34-27. This is definitely a game I'm going to have my eye on as well on Saturday night. And then the late game, you got Kansas State at Colorado. This is an interesting game. K-State favored by 3.5. And Austin's Colorado primetime Buffaloes are 4-1, and they're actually playing decent football for the first time since primetime has taken over as the head coach. I will say that I've been a big detractor of Colorado, and I do not trust them at all. And they have not played all that well for the most part of his tenure, but they're playing better now, and they're on their own field at night. That's going to be a fantastic environment. A lot of people are going to be watching this game, and we know the last time Kansas State went on the road in a tough environment at night, Avery Johnson was terrible, and they got blown out against BYU. I think Avery Johnson plays better in this game because he's going to use that experience of that embarrassing loss against BYU, and lessons are going to be learned from that game, and I think he will do better against Colorado, but something tells me, man, he's not going to be ready enough to get this win. I'm going to go with Colorado reluctantly to knock off Kansas State 34-27, and a great Big 12 matchup on Saturday night after dark. But those are my picks for every single Week 7 college football game. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about my picks, which games you were looking forward to the most, and which games you think upsets are going to happen. There were a lot of upsets in Week 6, and there's probably going to be a lot more upsets in Week 7, and that's what's making college football so fun this season. There's been a lot of parity with NIL and the transfer portal, and a lot of teams that aren't normally good are having a lot of success, and even the big dogs are going down, surprisingly, including Bama to Vanderbilt. So it should be very interesting to see what happens this week. But subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.